You don't bring a witness to a murder, you bring a co-defendant. Do you know why? Mutually assured destruction. You got to trust that that person and you are going to keep your mouths shut. And how can you do that? You can only do that if that person is equally guilty, equally culpable, and wants the same objective you do. And nobody wanted Jared Bridegan dead. Nobody that the evidence uncovered or the investigation uncovered more than this defendant and his wife. So if you're Henry Tenon and you're going to kill Jared Bridegan and you need help with it, you bring someone who wanted Jared Bridegan dead, who wanted to see it happen, who wanted to see it successful, and who wouldn't rat you out later. Mutually assured destruction. Henry Tenon had very few close associates. You heard from his phone records he had a girlfriend, Peanut. He had Jeremy Ordway, his roommate, and he had Mr. Fernandez, who he is in frequent contact with during this time frame. And you saw in Mario Fernandez's phone that Henry Tenon, although his contact was deleted, that Mario Fernandez had a contact, Jerry at Potomac, Jeremy Ordway. And you will see that the phone number for Jeremy Ordway in the defendant's phone matches a phone number that was calling Henry Tenon's phone that night. The phone here by this green tower. While Tenon, who's on foot at this pink tower, these dots. We know he's there from the surveillance. We know he's there from the cell site with that phone linked to Henry Tenon 53. His phone for 7612 is using this green tower. And Jerry Ordway is calling this green tower phone during the homicide. And we know the truck, the person driving the truck, is separated from the person on foot. So if Jerry Ordway is calling this phone, that means it ain't Jerry Ordway. And if you eliminate Jerry Ordway from the list of associates of Henry Tenon, the people that he's close with, you're left with one person, the person with the motive, the person you bring to a crime, the person who wants you to commit that crime, and it's going to help you succeed in your endeavor. If you're Henry Tenon, you don't bring a witness, you bring Mario Fernandez to complete the mission he wanted you to complete. You bring your co-defendant. And we'll never know where Mario Fernandez really was that night because his phone stops communicating with the cell tower. And not just stops communicating with the cell tower, it stops recording those timing advance recorded data points. Even though there's a number of them before the murder, and even though there's a number of them after the murder, there just happens to be none of them. Starting at 7:10, when they end here on the slide, through 8:20. And there is no incoming, outgoing, text calls, etc. Agent Blythe testified even if you are on Wi-Fi at your house, your phone will still interact with the cellular tower and still record data in those records and still record those timing advance. And he said it's much more likely, it makes more sense based on the totality of everything that the phone was off or in airplane mode, rather than it just happened to have connection issues on the timing advance and just happened to not be using his phone at the same time. And another thing that happened to happen here is that the last timing advance data point recorded is at 7:10:28 p.m. And when you go back and watch that surveillance video of the homicide truck leaving Pablo Hamlet before Jared Bridegan's killed, it pulls out at 7:12 p.m. So his phone, if it goes into airplane mode, as I'm arguing it does, or is turned off, is a minute and a half before that truck pulls out. And do you know where Mario Fernandez's residence is in relation to that truck parked at Pablo Hamlet? Over a fence, over a gravel parking lot. A minute and a half. In its totality, there is no other reasonable inference or explanation than he was getting in that truck to drive it, to take Tenon down, to complete the mission that he wanted, accomplished. No doubt. Again. I anticipate that the argument will be that there is no DNA that connects Mario Fernandez to that crime scene. There is no witness that puts Mario Fernandez at that crime scene. There's no surveillance that puts Mario Fernandez at that crime scene. There is no photos or DNA or evidence or ballistics testing that put a 10mm firearm in the hand of Mario Fernandez, handing it to Henry Tenon. And that is because of the nature of this crime. The almost perfect crime, designed so that there would be no link to this defendant, designed so he would never get caught. How can I show you a text between Mario Fernandez and Henry Tenon about murdering Jared Bridegan when they have deleted all of their texts? How can I show you the geographic location of Mario Fernandez the night of the homicide if he has turned his phone off?
Do you want to be heard?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. I'll sustain it.
Henry Tenon is not available as a witness in this case. Henry Tenon and Mario Fernandez committed this crime together, and Henry Tenon can't be here to tell you about their conversations. There would be no way in the world this defendant would write murder on the subject line of a check. Of course, he would launder the money. Of course, he would make it look legitimate. Of course, he would hope and pray and expect that the Jacksonville Beach Police Department would just never, ever, ever figure out it was Henry Tenon and never figure out the connection to him. If you outsource your murder, you are doing it so that your DNA and your footprints and your fingerprints are nowhere near the crime. When I spoke about the defendant and Ms. Gardner being the architects of Jared Bridegan's murder, that's exactly what I mean. If you are an architect, if you design a house and pay someone to do the painting, of course, there is not going to be the architect's DNA on the paintbrush. There's not going to be surveillance of the architect buying the supplies. There's not going to be a witness saying, I saw the architect painting this house. That's what solicitation in principle means. That doesn't mean that the architect didn't plan it, want it, finance it. It doesn't mean the architect wasn't satisfied with the outcome. Individually, you can explain anything away. But a reasonable doubt is not a possible, speculative, imaginary, forced doubt, a guess, conjecture, or proof beyond all doubt. There is always some possible, hypothetical, made-up explanation for something. But you cannot go down that path. You have to look to the evidence and the testimony and your common sense. All of the evidence. This is the last portion, and then I'm wrapping up, I promise. The Getty Museum in New York City did this exhibit on textiles. What they did was they showed microscopic views. So what you see here is a fabric, and when you look at it under a microscope, ancient fabrics, you can see the minor defects, the imperfections in the threads, the weaving, the wear and tear over time. And then in the exhibit, when you pull back, you see how the threads are woven, how they connect, and what the tapestry shows. The law does not require a microscopic view of the evidence. It does not require proof beyond all doubt. It does not require perfection. No matter what you look at individually, how close you look at it, when you step back and see how it all relates together, the witnesses, the testimony, the motive, it is clear that it makes sense. No matter how much you look at these individually, you are going to keep coming back to this conclusion. You can test it, you can argue it, you can play devil's advocate, but there is no other conclusion that makes sense other than this defendant had Henry Tenon killed Jared Bridegan. It is unexplainable in any other way for all of these to add up together. And if you think that there is no reasonable doubt that he aided, encouraged, incited, solicited, or was there that night, then you have a duty to find him guilty. And that brings us to your verdict, which is the truth. For those of us that do work in homicide, we have an expression. The living we owe respect, To the dead, we owe the truth. Your verdict will forever define the death of Jared Bridegan and the responsibility.
Overruled.
It will forever define the death of Jared Bridegan and the responsibility and culpability under the law of those that planned it, of those that wanted it, and of those that made it happen. The shooter was a stranger. The murder was personal. This defendant is that thread that runs through that whole tapestry, and no matter where you yank, it will not come unraveled. It all comes together, and it all connects through him. Find him guilty as charged.
Thank you, Ms. Stifler. Members of the jury, we're going to take our lunch recess and return back for the remainder of the closing arguments. I'm going to remind you that at this point in time, since closings, I'm going to restrict the phones. Mr. Holman, I'm going to restrict the phones, okay? You can have your lunch recess, but because the evidence is being summed up, I'm going to restrict your phone use while we are in session today, okay? Leave your notepads on your chair, follow the communication rules over the recess, and I hope that you all enjoy your lunch. All right, please let the record reflect that the jury has left the courtroom due to the extended nature. Normally, everyone may be seated. So generally speaking, when we close cases down, I wouldn't have given them access to their phones, so I'm not going to give it to them over the lunch recess. Was there any objection to that? No. All right, so after the lunch recess, we'll call this, it's 12:22, we'll call it 12:30. We'll return back at 1:30. The defense will be set up for a closing argument. Okay, if there's something that comes up, let me know. You all enjoy your lunch. Court's in recess.
About that. On the night of the homicide, Mr. Fernandez returns to his house at 5:45. He is there the entire night. There is no evidence that he left his home. Think about all of the different detectives that told you that they collected detailed evidence from the crime scene. People touched the little, the caps that are on the tire, we collected those. Not one person can connect you, Mr. Fernandez, to any piece of evidence that was left at the homicide scene, or most importantly, the blue truck. They used special vacuums, if you recall me asking the detective, with special filters so they could collect hair. They did fingerprint dusting. They did DNA testing of the steering wheel, the seats, the headrests. Not one piece of evidence connects Mr. Fernandez to ever being inside of that Ford F-150. And then I went one step further. I'm like, well, it's been a little while. Was there evidence that the vehicle was cleaned out, wiped, cleaned, vacuumed? No. It was side of a pigsty. No evidence that it was cleaned out. And yet they couldn't find one piece of evidence connecting Mr. Fernandez. Remember, when Mr. Fernandez goes in for his interview, it's voluntary. And they say, will you give us a DNA swab? And he says, no problem. And he gives us DNA. And according to the government, what they told you is he never thought he would ever get caught. So of course he would give a DNA swab. Well, if he was so willing to do that, knowing that he was inside of the blue truck, that doesn't make sense. And that's in conflict with what the government wants you to believe. Not a single eyewitness, not a single Crime Stopper, no DNA, no fingerprints, and he tells law enforcement he's home and he gives details about date night. Detective Johns, went on to say that they don't know where the F-150 went post-homicide, that an unknown driver pulled out of Pablo Hamlet, an unknown driver passes Ocean K, and they do not know where the truck went post the homicide. It's never to be seen again. If there's an unknown driver, okay, and unknown locations, 36-minute gaps, and then a vehicle that just disappears, if they don't know who the players in this case are, then they don't know what happened. And I mean the government doesn't know what happened. And when they say there's only one person that could connect Mr. Fernandez to these little details, it's impossible to say that when you don't know who the other person in the truck was. The other person in the truck could be connected to Shanna Gardner. The other person in the truck could be connected to Shanna Gardner's family. The other person in the truck could be connected directly to Jared Bridegan. And we would never know because we don't have their bank records. We don't have their DNA swab. We don't have their phone records. It's an unknown player that's not Mr. Fernandez. So when you go back there and you say, well, geez, I mean, out of all the gin joints in all the world, it's Mario Fernandez's, it's Henry Tenon is Mario Fernandez's tenant. So all this makes sense, and we should just go along and make sure that we don't unstring the yarn or whatever it is that Ms. Stifler showed you at the end of the tapestry. The bottom line is, for the government to tell you that there's only one connection, they have to know who's involved, and they don't. Keep going. So the 10mm firearm. How many times have you heard the government tell you it's an unaccounted for 10mm firearm? Let me be very clear about this. The first thing they would have to do for this to have any evidentiary value is they have to tell you that John Biggerstaff's 10mm firearm is connected to the homicide of Jared Bridegan. They have not done that. There are tens of thousands of 10mm firearms in Glocks that have been produced since 1991, and they don't know which of any one of those it is that was involved in this homicide. So let's just start with that premise. Then the second thing the government would have to do is then connect Mr. Fernandez to John Biggerstaff's firearm. So what did we show you? We showed you that John Biggerstaff, in fact, did purchase a 10mm firearm in 2016. Then he became, he was arrested. So this is the purchase of the Glock. This is the Glock that was put on the firearms affidavit, which of course is a big deal that it matches, because it would be a big deal if the government could show that John Biggerstaff bought a 10mm, then filled out a firearms affidavit, and that firearm wasn't on it. That would be good evidence to suggest that he kept one of his guns. But that's not what the facts are. The facts are is that he bought one, he filled out a firearms affidavit, and the exact one that he bought was put on it. And the magistrate said you can no longer have guns, and he got rid of them. And I think Ms. Stifler said during her close, well, I mean, you know, just because a judge tells you to do it doesn't mean that you have to do it. Sure it does. He got rid of all of them, with Juan Biggerstaff, his son, present, and someone from federal probation. And when you don't follow the rules, that's exactly what happens. You go to jail. And when he tested positive for drugs, because the government does a little thing called following up, they make sure you don't have your firearms when you're on federal pretrial release. You think they just take your word for it? No, they send someone to your home. They make you fill out an affidavit. They check to make sure you don't have them. They tell you you're not supposed to do drugs. When he tested positive for drugs, what did they do? They arrested him, and he went straight to jail. So this idea that they just don't follow up, or it's not a big deal, it's in conflict to their own evidence. So then he fills out the firearms affidavit, that firearm is put on there, and it's not seen again for all of these years. made such a big deal about it, how rare it was, how this could be the only 10 millimeter that could be involved. They went to one pawn shop. Detective John sent his investigators to one pawn shop in all of Jacksonville, and they found 6 10 millimeters that were sold in the recent time, 3 of which were Glock Gen 40 Gen 4s, the exact make and model of John Biggerstaff's. Like, he laughed when he's like, do you know anyone that owns a 10 millimeter? He hasn't been allowed to be around guns or people that are in possession of guns since 2016. He probably doesn't know someone who has one. We don't have to guess that people own them. 6 of them were purchased in and around the time of the firearm, of the homicide, in Jax Beach, 3 of which match the exact description. And when I asked Detective Johns, well, once you learned that, what did you do? Nothing. You didn't follow up? No. You didn't go interview anyone? No. Nothing. 0. When they learned that Henry Tenon had gone to a particular pawn shop and actually pawned something, did you go there and investigate to see if he got a 10 millimeter? No. Did you go to any other pawn shops anywhere across town ever? No. But they want, what's more reasonable? That maybe someone who actually got a firearm during that period of time may have been involved, or that Mario Fernandez, who not one witness, and we'll talk about John Biggerstaff, Juan Biggerstaff, and Fred Barton, not one of them said anything about Mario Fernandez, other than John Biggerstaff said, I did not give him a firearm. On March 1st, Mr. Fernandez came in and he gave a voluntary interview. You know, because of his bank accounts, that on March 1st, he had in excess of $200,000 available to him. Hiring a lawyer is not something that he could not have done. He didn't show up with counsel. He didn't invoke his right to remain silent. He sat down voluntarily. He gave an interview. And then I asked on cross-examination to figure out, well, let's see if the guy was telling the truth. He talked a lot. You heard the interview. Detective, he told you that Jared Bridegan got into a big confrontation with Bishop Curry about the purple hair. Did you ever go and interview Bishop Curry to see if that was true? We did. And in fact, there was a big confrontation, wasn't there? Well, I don't know if it was a confrontation, wouldn't answer my question, but yes, they got into it, and Bishop Curry was not happy about their interaction. That's what Detective Johns told you. But the point that I'm making is, he went, he interviewed him, and it did, in fact, happen. It was true. He wasn't lying. AB phone call, true. The children's therapist that he talked about, Mercedes McGowan. This is a guy who's some absentee stepdad. He knows who the children's therapist is. He knows all the medications they're on. Did you find out if that was true? That was the children's therapist? We did. He admitted that it was a high conflict co-parenting situation. He didn't deny that. If he's thinking I'm the suspect in this murder or I'm involved in this, maybe I should make it seem like things weren't that bad. No, he said it was a high conflict. That's exactly what the evidence showed. As Ms. Stifler said, most people said he admitted there was some high conflict, and that's exactly what he told the police. He didn't undersell it or try to underreport. He told it exactly like it was. And he was upset that Miss Gardner and the children were not invited to Jared Bridegan's funeral after inviting Kirsten Bridegan into their home. And all of that was true. They were not invited, and they did invite Kirsten Bridegan into their home. The government, of course, talks about the motive. We talked about the family law case as to why there's no motive, and they just keep focusing on this one sentence. But I ask you to please remember that what the evidence was is that they asked him questions about Jared Bridegan. So they keep saying, well, he just kept bad talking Jared Bridegan. They were only asking questions about Jared Bridegan, and that he would give the answers. And he was saying that the children needed to be in therapy, and therapy was good for the children. And if Jared Bridegan attempted to take the children out of therapy, which they believed Mercedes McGowan was helpful, that the family law lawyers suggested that then they would file for a social investigation, and then they would move to modify the time sharing to 60-40 or something that worked better for the children. That's what the interview that's in evidence says. Don't take my word for it. That's why I took the transcript out and I read it line by line with Detective Johns. It's not just that we want decision making. And most importantly, the children were never taken out of therapy and they never moved, ever, to modify the time sharing agreement. So the predicate of what this was based on never happened, and then they never took this action. So to suggest that now they would just kill Jared Bridegan because that's an easier solution, there is no evidence they had any motive to take one single day away from Jared Bridegan unless he did something that would negatively impact the children, which he decided not to do.
Mr. Dreiser, can I pause you for a break?
Yes.
Okay. Members of the jury will take 15 minutes, okay?
Something to do with it. And there's not a darker, more desolate, better location to do this. Only Jacksonville Beach people would know this. You have to scout this. You have to drive around and know this. Henry Tenon from Potomac, I submit to you, would not have figured this out without Mario Fernandez's help. That's full stop. The location, and this also is weaved in with the timing of the whole thing. If there is some motive that we don't know about, or some people with Jared Bridegan we don't know about, despite all efforts, what's the best place to shoot Jared Bridegan on a date night? Where do you know that he's going to be stopped and alone for a period of time? Where do you know it? At the home of the Gardners. And he stops and drops off those kids. That's where he stopped. They don't kill him there. That's too close. They have to find another location to do the killing where he will be stopped and his stepkids will be safe. Only after the kids are dropped off does the shooting occur. The only definite stopping point during the drop-off is at their house. And he had to know it was a date night. How many people in the world know about this? We talk about reasonable doubts, not all doubts. It has to be him. There is no other reasonable decision or reasonable explanation. Let's talk about his. So we have the timing. We have the location that are married, right? The location and timing. Those are the only facts that you had. It's pretty compelling that Mario Fernandez and Shannon Gardner are involved, just based on those things. But we have more because we have his guilty mind. Now, he did a good job in this murder. He didn't do a perfect job. His phone was not connected. Now, in today's world, the fact that there is absolutely no activity, no phone calls, no TDOA, none of that stuff on a blank screen during the time of this murder is this defendant is the unluckiest man on the face of the planet. That his tenant that he paid $10,000 for, the timing that only he could know about with date night and location, that his phone happens to be not connected in any way, shape, or form. He's either the unluckiest man on the face of the earth or he's guilty. Unluckiest man on the face of the earth, Stifler put on the usage rates. And the usage rate shows he should be using his phone during this time. Does he have to be? No. One piece of evidence, but that piece of evidence doesn't lie. It doesn't have motive. It is what it is. But that's not the only guilty mind. It's because he goes and deletes things. He deletes things right before he's going to meet the police. And do you really think it's because he has pornography on there, like he's going to get arrested for looking at pornography on his phone? If the police don't have anything better to do? He knows what he's going down there for. He knows. He tells everyone, I know why they're looking at me. My wife's ex-husband was murdered. And then the defense stands up there and says there's no evidence that any of those deletions have anything to do with the crime because he deleted them. This is the catch-22. Right? You're either, if you get in a plane, if y'all remember the wonderful book, Heller, that we all had to read in school, Catch-22, if you get in the plane and you're too scared to fly bombing missions over Europe, then you're sane enough to fly bombing missions over Europe. It's a catch-22. You either don't say anything and you fly bombing missions over Europe, or you say, you gotta be crazy to fly bombing missions over Europe, and then you're not crazy. They actually argue to you, we don't know what the deletions are, because he deleted it. I don't know how to respond to that. He says that we're doing half-truths. We're doing half-truths. They can't show you what the deletions are because they're deleted. I do that.